So it began with this honey locust, Gladitsia triacanthus. And after working with a few pods, I decided to work with a few more. This time I decided to soak them. So I gathered pods, washed them, and soaked them overnight. I made sure to weigh them down so they stayed under the water. In preparing to deal with honey locust pods, I'd watched a video that recommended soaking. Not only did it make the pods more pliable and easier to deal with, but it helped to reconstitute the sap so that you could harvest it for other recipes. And I really liked the idea of having yet another part of the honey locust pod that I could use in recipes. So after soaking overnight, it was time to drain and use these honey locust pods. For the next step, I set up a series of bowls. One for my pods, one for the seeds that I'd be saving for roasting, and another container for the sap that I intended to collect. I'll admit, this container was a bit big. I was being a little optimistic. After a little trial and error, I realized the best way to handle this was to start with a pair of scissors and simply cut around the seams of both sides of the pod. Once that was done, I could insert a butter knife to open up the pod, and then I could release the seeds. Once those were removed, I could simply take the butter knife and gently scrape off the sap, which I reserved in the separate container. Now, with the amount of seed pods I brought home, this was a long and arduous process. And because of the amount that I did, this was sticky work, and it's best to wear rubber gloves. This is not for the faint of heart. The entire processing took about 6.5 hours. It was a 3-step process. I had to separate pods from the seeds and the sap from the pods. And this was just the initial processing time. It didn't include breaking down the pods further to get them into my dehydrator, nor did it include the roasting time for my beans. But at the end of it all, I did have all of these pods, these beans, and this sap. And I am super excited to have this much raw material to create wild foods in my kitchen.